we're going to get started. We've just left Fiji, and now we're going to transport you to somewhere completely different, and we're going to take you over to the Galapagos Islands. This is Amy. She is with the Galapagos Sky, which I will tell you is a personal favorite of the Deep Blue team. So without further ado, I'm going to put you in the hands of Amy.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Deep Blue, and thank you guys for all signing in from your homes to listen to this presentation. As Cheryl said, my name is Amy, and I manage Galapagos Sky. I live in Florida and manage the boat part of the reservations and sales from here. Our operations are in Quito and Guayaquil, Ecuador, and of course in San Cristobal in the Galapagos. I am going to try to do this presentation more about the Galapagos versus about Galapagos Sky, so you can learn about the destination and know why, as divers, we all know that we want to go to Galapagos. Some people have researched it, some people haven't, but they know that there's something about that arch that's very magical, and there's something that pulls divers to that arch. Towards the end of the presentation, then I will talk a little bit about Galapagos Sky, but I will explain to you all. It's so difficult when you can't see your audience. I really like usually having an audience where I can see and have people raise their hands and ask questions, but bear with me. You've probably all seen that arch in magazines. Maybe you've seen documentaries on TV about that arch. That is in the Galapagos Islands, which is in South America, off the coast of Ecuador. If you can see on this, oops, and I've got my pointer, Florida is about like right up that way, if you can see my pointer, and Quito and Guayaquil, Ecuador are right here. And this jaunt over to the Galapagos Islands is about 600 miles. The flight from Quito and Guayaquil over to the islands is only about an hour. We have our boat in the Galapagos Islands, and we do a year-round itinerary right there in the islands. It's right in the central time zone. Sometimes people think Galapagos is somewhere very far away, but if you're living in the United States, you're really only going to have an hour or two backward or forward with your time zone change, so not a lot of jet lag issue. Again, here's Florida. Cheryl and Deep Blue somewhere up there, and then this is the Galapagos. There are flights from the United States. This is this PDF is a little hard to read, but this is just basically the flights that go into those two main cities. But from the United States, there are flights from New York, from Dallas, from Houston, from Atlanta, from Fort Lauderdale, and from Miami. The longest, I believe, from New York, the flight is only about 6.5 hours if you get the direct flight from New York into Guayaquil. So not too far, not a lot of travel. So here are the magic Galapagos Islands that everyone's heard so much about. We have Galapagos Sky right here on San Cristobal. A lot of other liveaboards are centered around Santa Cruz, the Baltra area. Those are the two main islands that both have airports in Galapagos. Pretty much in Galapagos, one of the main questions that I get when people come see us at conventions is, sorry about that, something about the water temperatures. A lot of people have heard that the water temperatures in Galapagos are quite cold. I will get into that in the next couple of slides, and I'll tell you more about the water temperature differences. We do, this red line is our itinerary for Galapagos Sky, but the main liveaboards operating in Galapagos, which are Galapagos Sky, Galapagos Aggressor, Galapagos Master, Humboldt Explorer, the Tiburon Explorer, basically all do a very similar itinerary. The big goal of liveaboards is to get up here. This is where Darwin's Arch is, up here in the far north, but Wolf and Darwin, that's the big draw for scuba divers. The other boats that go around Galapagos to do the day hiking and snorkeling tourism, they only stay in these areas and they don't go up to Wolf and Darwin. The only boats that go up there are the scuba liveaboards specifically. Sometimes people ask, can I go to Galapagos and just not do a liveaboard? Can I just stay on one of the main islands and go scuba diving? The answer is yes, but if you just stay in a hotel, you can't make it up to these islands. They are about 16 to 18 hours overnight. So all of the scuba liveaboards, we do a long run one time during the itinerary up, and then another long run down one time during our itinerary. And I'll talk to you about the differences with that as well. Okay, so people want to know about the water temperatures. We have, and you'll be getting this, Cheryl explained to me that they will be emailing. I sent them some PDFs and they'll be emailing these out later. So you don't have this now, but don't worry about trying to take a screenshot because this will be made available to you. But this is historic water temperatures given to me by our dive guides over the last 6 years. And I've entered them in so I can give you very actual and factual historic water temperature averages. We have a warmer season, which is March, April, May, and we have a colder season, which is more August, September, October. And then we have these transitional seasons, May, June, July, January, December, etc. So when people say, when is the best time to go? I typically ask them if they like colder water. Some people love putting those dry suits on. Some people don't like getting out of a 3 mil shorty. So, you know, if you're more the warm water diver, you're going to be looking more at April, March, April, May. If you're that hardy dry suit, like to put on all kinds of layers, then August, September, October. Now, everyone again knows they want to go to Galapagos, but what is it that's so different about these islands? Sometimes people don't understand what makes it so diverse, why we have so much diversity there. But we have very, very significant water temperature changes coming off the coast of Ecuador, which would be coming into the islands this way. We have a warm current coming in this way. We have a cold water current coming in this way, and we have a much warmer current coming down and hitting Wolf and Darwin. So Wolf and Darwin have a very significantly higher water temperature than the rest of the islands. So say in April, we have an average of 80 degrees, 80 to 78 degrees up at these two little islands. All of the scuba liveaboards in Galapagos spend at least 3 days up here. So we make that long run up to Wolf and Darwin, and then we spend 3 full days there. So we'll spend a full day at Darwin, a full day at Wolf, and we'll do a combination of Wolf and Darwin before we head back down. So when people are concerned about the cold water that they hear so much about, they don't have to worry that much because you're going to spend 3 full days doing 4 dives a day up in those warmer temperatures. Again, if we're talking like October, November, it can be 76 to 75, which to me, that's a little more on the chilly side. You're looking at definitely wearing like an 8 mil, 7 mil, hooded vest, gloves, etc. When we leave Wolf and Darwin, and again, this is true for almost all the scuba liveaboards, we head down to the very west side of Galapagos. This is where that cold water current comes in, and this is where you're looking at the colder water temperatures. As you can see, September 61 is an average. Even in March, April, May, you're looking at a high of 68, 69. We do 3 dives here on this west side, one here specifically at Cabo Douglas. This is where we see the marine iguanas. Marine iguanas are endemic to the Galapagos Islands. It's the only place in the world where iguanas feed underwater. Not every boat in Galapagos has a permit to dive with marine iguanas. Galapagos Sky does, and several of the other boats do as well, but some do not. So something that you want to take note of when you're planning a trip if you are interested in seeing the marine iguanas. Then we do 2 dives at Punta Vincenta Roca, which is right up here. Again, these are going to be the cold water dives. This is where we see Mola Mola. Then we pick up anchor that night while our guests are having dinner and sleeping, and we come down to the southern and central islands in this area where you're going to have kind of an in-between, an average between 70, 76 in these areas. Even in the warmer times, you're still going to have in the mid 70s. For most of the scuba liveaboards, you're going to have 3 days of diving in this mid-water temperature. So really, you're only going to have 1 full day of cold, where you just want to put on all your layers. If you have a dry suit, wear it. If you have a 7 mil, you want all your hooded vests, etc. For this day. Now, I'm just going to go in. This is very Galapagos Sky specific. I'm sorry, because I pulled this from another presentation, but this is typically a very standard itinerary for Galapagos. The itineraries in Galapagos, I'll just back up a little bit, are all dictated to us by the Galapagos National Park. They all, they tell us what day we can be at what island so that we don't have a lot of overlap, which is quite nice. Like, for instance, when we're in this area, even when we're up at Wolf, when we're up at Darwin, the competing boats are in a different location. So we're all in a different place at a different time. So like when we're diving here with the marine iguanas, we're the only ones there, which, so just you and your 15 other mates from the boat, and our guides are the only ones in the water. But for Sky, typically on the first day, we'll do a checkout dive in that mid-region, the southern and central islands. It's a great place to see sea lions. All the boats there do a morning at Bartholomew. So it's just like a nice warm-up dive, 50 to 60 feet, nothing crazy. Another big question I get a lot is about people hear that it's advanced diving only. I'll get into that more as we go along, and I'll explain some of the differences. But Bartholomew, this is just an average drift dive, nothing crazy, not too deep, 50 to 60 feet, mid-water temperatures. People ask a lot too about if we do any land excursions, because if people go to Galapagos, they also want to see the top side. I believe that all the scuba liveaboards have on their itinerary doing a hike to the top of Bartholomew. It's 374 steps up to the top, and our guides give amazing information along the way about the flora and the fauna that you see as you're climbing up to the top. We do 2 dives at Cousins Rock. Again, nothing too difficult, just a nice drift, like a 30 to 80 foot bottom. Lots of sea turtles, you'll see white-tip sharks. Then all this, again, just Sky, along with all the other boats, we all make our trek up to Wolf and Darwin. It's a long trek up there. There is a time when the water's calmer. That tends to be when it's the warmer season. In the colder season, it can be a little rougher. But specific for our boat, we've done a lot of modifications to make the ride up overnight a lot smoother for our guests. And I can talk about that if you're interested in booking on Sky. But this is where it's more of our advanced diving. It's the warmer water, but this is where we're doing deeper diving. Sometimes we're doing a blue water hover. We typically drop in and do a fairly quick descent to the bottom, and we hold on to volcanic rock. Guests are welcome to bring a reef hook if they like, but you definitely need to wear gloves. We do hold on to volcanic rock because the currents can be quite strong, and we're typically in deeper water with stronger currents, is why this is considered more advanced diving. This is where you're going to see the schooling hammerheads. This is where you see big schools of jacks. This is also where we see big whale sharks. We see the whale sharks in the colder season. We start seeing them at the end of May, and we see them straight through December. That arch, they used to think that the whale sharks that they saw there were aggregating or having spawning aggregations. They've since learned that the whale sharks that we see up there are actually just moving by that giant arch like some sort of magnet. They go off on their way up north, and most of the whale sharks that we see in Galapagos are pregnant and big adult females. We spend a 3rd day up there doing a combination of Darwin and Wolf. Again, a great place to see mantas. This is where you're going to see the big action. And then we make that jaunt down to the far west side where we have that colder water diving, where we see the marine iguanas. Where we do that dive, it's very shallow water. It's only 10 to 15 feet. It's in a horseshoe-shaped bay, and nice and protected. And we spend about an hour in the water with the marine iguanas. They only feed for an hour a day, so we're allowed to get in the water with them on Fridays while they feed. Oops, I missed one, but we do spend, we also do 2 dives on Friday up at Punta Vincente Roca, where we see the mola mola. Then on Saturdays, we do a dive at Isla Pinzon, and then we do go spend time in town. We go see the Galapagos tortoises up in the highlands, and then we spend time in Puerto Ayora on Santa Cruz. We then make our way back to San Cristobal, where that's where our home airport is, and we spend some time at the Interpretation Center, which gives the history of Galapagos, what they're doing to get off of fossil fuels, what they're doing for conservation, etc. That's a little bit about the picture of the islands. It is important, all divers, Galapagos Sky is very strict about it. We want all of our divers to have their nitrox certification before they get there. Basically, if you're planning a trip to Galapagos, go ahead and get your nitrox certification before you travel. That would be my recommendation. All the diving there is done off pangas. This is all the boats there. You gear up on the main vessel, you get into the panga, and then just do a quick hop to the dive site. None of the dive sites are very far from where we keep the main vessel. Back roll entries, something, you know, not hard to learn if you've never done that before. And then we take our gear off in the water, hand it up, and we do have ladders on our pangas. Something about the crew, this is specific again to Sky, but just overall in Galapagos, all of the crew in Galapagos are Galapagian or Ecuadorian. They are, it's not the type of destination, the South American Ecuadorian labor laws don't allow us to hire crew that are, you know, a dive guide from Miami, a dive guide from the UK, a dive guide from Thailand. So all of the crew are Galapagian. Our dive guides are also certified by the Galapagos National Park and go through a lot of extensive training. Something also to know about Galapagos, sometimes people aren't aware of this, but all of the boats, we all carry 16 passengers and 2 dive guides. The Galapagos National Park has actually dictated the ratio of 8-to-1, so 8 divers to every 1 dive guide. Galapagos Sky and most of the other boats now are offering private dive guide services. So if that ratio is out of your comfort zone, you know, whatever boat you're booked on or plan on booking on, just check with them and make sure that they do offer private dive guide services for a fee. Sorry, this is from a presentation specific about Sky. A couple things to know, definitely bring gloves. I mentioned, and you know, I know I talk fast, but you're very welcome to bring reef hooks, but definitely bring something to protect your hands. When we are diving over corals or fragile environments, we never touch the bottom, but there are places where it's volcanic rock that we do hold on or use a reef hook. Collapsible luggage is easier to store. That's true pretty much of liveaboards worldwide. Something specific to Galapagos that you may not be aware of is the currency used in Ecuador is the US dollar. So kind of nice for travelers from the United States. You don't have to worry about exchanging money. Communication. Going to Galapagos is kind of like going back in time a little bit. And some people think that's great and some people get very nervous about it. But cell phone service is not as fast and speedy as what it is here in the US with our 5G, et cetera. And most of the boats, I believe that there's actually only 1 boat right now in Galapagos that's offering Wi-Fi packages, but there's no internet on board. We do, obviously, the office, we have communication with Galapagos Sky. We can always send messages out to them and get messages back. They do have a satellite phone on board, but you will be basically disconnected when you are up at Wolf and Darwin and out away from the main islands. Things to think about when you're traveling to Galapagos. You will, even flying from the United States, need a hotel stay. in either one of the cities, Guayaquil or Quito. We tell people to arrive into Ecuador at least a day or two early, just to leave a buffer in case flights get canceled, luggage gets delayed, etc. You guys don't have so much of a jet lag issue, but it's just a nice buffer to, in case things go, awry with the travel. But to stay in either Quito or Guayaquil, Ecuador, and I know the gang at Deep Blue, they know all the hotels down there and which ones are the best ones to go to. The air travel between Guayaquil or Quito to San Cristobal, there's 3 small airlines that run back and forth. They are large planes. Sometimes people think that they're going to be little teeny tiny planes. They're actually large planes, but there's only about 3 or 4 flights in and 3 or 4 flights out a day from either one of the airports. But they are large planes. We don't have issues with divers having their gear left behind because, again, they do have large cargo holds, etc. The Galapagos National Park has a $100 fee. And then there's little, we call it the TCT card. It's $20, etc. Sorry, I guess this is getting a little bit more into specific about Sky, but I would say that this is general. Ecuadorians are very proud of their food. Anywhere you eat in Quito, Guayaquil, once you get over to the islands, the food is amazing. Specific to Sky, we do accommodate vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, etc. We are working on sourcing more and more of our food in the islands. And right now we can say that 52% of the food that we serve on board is organic. We do offer open bar on board, beer and wine and open bar are included. We do have premium beers and wines available for purchase, of course, soda, coffee, tea, etc. And we do provide reusable bottles on board and have water coolers located around the ship to fill your water. This is just a picture of our cabins. We have master cabins that can be 1 double bed or 2 double beds. We do evening turn down service. We have robes in the rooms. We have safes in the closets. We do have hair dryers and robes. We have a lovely lounge area. We have Apple TVs. Our guides will give presentations in our lounge every evening on whether it's the penguins of Galapagos or the marine iguanas or the hammerheads or the whale sharks. If there's a subject that you're interested in, you can certainly ask them. But our guides are very, very passionate about the marine life there and happy to share what they know. But they do presentations every evening after dinner to further educate our guests. Our dive deck, typical dive deck, and something to mention, the electric outlets in Ecuador and in Galapagos are the same as in the United States, so you don't need to bring an adapter. That's a little bit that we do for sustainability and conservation, something I'm proud of, but that, whew, I did it. I usually talk for a long time. I was actually able to do that in half an hour. Talk pretty fast, but that is Galapagos and a little bit about Galapagos Sky. So I'm happy to take questions if Cheryl wants to open it up or if there's some questions. I know they know a lot about the destination themselves.
Hi, Amy. So just if you could go back, we've had a lot of questions in some of our previous ones. If you want, you've got plenty of time. We can take it for questions in just a couple minutes, but yeah. Could you go back and talk a little bit more about the sustainability and yeah, that slide, because we've had lots of questions and we're big, huge fans of that too. So maybe before Cheryl opens it up for questions, you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So sustainability and conservation, this is, I skipped over this a little bit because I'm trying not to be too Galapagos Sky specific, but our parent company, EcoVentura, has been in business for over 30 years. It's on 2nd generation right now. It was originally started by the father. It's a family from Guayaquil, Ecuador, but they're very, 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 very passionate about the islands and the environment. The owner has given TED Talks on conservation. He's on the National Council of the World Wildlife Fund. We were the first ones to have the Smart Voyager status, which we have to prove what we're doing. It's a certification program. We have to constantly prove that our boats, that we're doing what we can to reduce our use of fossil fuels, that we're making the boats more efficient, that we're using proper, a lot of this is dictated by the Galapagos National Park too, but using proper solvents and cleaners on the boats. But we were the first carbon neutral company in Ecuador, and that included the flights that I take to going to conventions to promote the boat. So we were pretty proud of that. We donate a week's proceeds every year to the Charles Darwin Foundation. It's called the Galapagos Marine Biodiversity Fund, but we give about $100,000 a year from Sky, and I believe about another $300,000 or $400,000 from EcoVentura to the Charles Darwin Foundation, which they are, how do I say it? Like in Florida, we have FWC, which is our Fish and Wildlife policing group. In Galapagos, the Charles Darwin Foundation, they're doing the research. They're the ones keeping an eye on everything, keeping an eye on the marine life, etc. Anyway, so we have eliminated single-use plastics off of our boats all the way down to the bread that gets delivered from the bakery now no longer comes in plastic bags, but we provide environmentally friendly soaps and shampoos in the showers, and then in all the bathrooms that are more environmentally friendly. So on and on and on. We have a full-time person in our office in Guayaquil that their main focus is just sustainability and conservation, and constantly pushing ourselves, going outside the box and doing improvements for conservation in Galapagos.
And thanks, Amy. I'm gonna, Stephanie Richards, Stephanie, I'm gonna try and unmute your mic because I know you got a couple of different questions. So I'm gonna try and unmute your mic real quick. But while I do, one of the things Stephanie had asked about is, do you offer citizen science opportunities? And you know, what I will say ahead of Amy is these guys do not toot their own horn enough on all of the things that they do locally and sustainable wise. They do it, but they do it very quietly in the background. So when you're looking for destinations or operators that they're sustainable friendly, that support the locals, Galapagos Sky is just doing it very quietly behind the scenes, but they're highly active to it and very committed to it. So I just kind of wanted to put that in there because Amy, you guys are just so modest about what you do on that side of things. I wanted to share that with everyone, but if you could go ahead and take it from here on citizen scientist opportunities and other things.
So that's a very interesting question. So citizen science in Galapagos, basically the park, we used to, years ago, Galapagos Sky, if we had an empty space, we would allow someone from the Charles Darwin Foundation to jump on board. And why not? You know, because it's so expensive for them to get up to Wolf and Darwin. So many years ago, we would allow them to jump on board and do their research, etc. on board. The park put an end to that, and they said if a vessel is up at any location for science, they have to do that under special permits. So the tourism boats have to do tourism, the science and research boats have to do science and research, and there can't be any overlap of that. Probably about the closest thing we come to that is every year we do have one of the researchers come on board. It's the week that we donate all the proceeds from Galapagos Sky to the Charles Darwin Foundation, that Galapagos Marine Biodiversity Fund. So we do have one of their scientists come on board 1 week a year. We've had other things where, like Reef that's located in Key Largo, they have run trips on Galapagos Sky where they are doing their own fish counting, etc. And they do plan on coming back, you know, maybe in the next couple of years, but they go to different locations. So it's a little bit challenging. I would love to be able to say that we would be open to doing more. We're just restricted by the park.
Thank you. Good info. And Stephanie, you are unmuted. So if you wanted to add anything or any of your other questions that you had, you are on.
Okay. One other quick question. I've seen a couple posts about the currents, and I was just wondering if those are seasonal or are they year round?
Okay. So, well, they're pretty much year round, but Up at Wolf and Darwin, this is where you're going to get the big, I call it the big kid diving, the big kid currents, because these are just two little teeny tiny rocks that shoot up out of the Pacific, versus like down here, you're not going to have as much current in this area. You know, it's not just a nice gentle current. So up here at Wolf and Darwin is where you can have the big kid currents. That again, up here is really the only place that we ever hold on. Where I said, you know, you might want a reef hook or, you know, to hold on, excuse me, to volcanic rock, you'd want to have gloves. When the currents are very strong, we stay in one place and we watch the show go by. We watch the hammerheads go by. You watch the big whale sharks come out of the deep blue, etc. When we make any sort of change from one area, like say if we're diving around Wolf, from one area to another, you just go with the current. You're never fighting the current. You don't have to swim back against it. You don't have to find your way back to the boat. So I tell people, you know, I think people have heard a lot, you know, people come to me and they've heard a lot of buildup about the currents. Once you do the first dive there, the first morning that you wake up there, you know, then you realize it's not as overwhelming as what, you know, it's not as scary as you think. But yeah, so, and if you're ever uncomfortable, you know, you could just certainly call the dive, go up with your dive buddy and do your safety stop and go back up. We do hand out Nautilus lifelines on board, those little GPS radios, you know, and again, they don't get used very much, but it's just a nice little thing to have, like if you do get away from the group.
Well, it's funny because I've seen most of the posts about the Galapagos and the currents are people who don't even carry the safety sausages. So I'm like, why were you there?
Oh, well, we hand them out. I mean, most of our divers show up with a nice big safety sausage. We also we do a lot of pre-qualifying. We want our divers to be advanced and ready for things like this before they get there. Sometimes we do require divers, if they're newer divers, to hire a private dive guide so that they have someone with them. But, you know, we hand out, we do have surface markers on board, and then we do have the Nautilus lifelines as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. And Penny Johnson, you're on. Penny, I don't know if you can hear us. It shows your mic's on.
Hi, Penny.
Hi, okay. Well, we don't seem to have Penny. If you end up having your mic on, then jump on in and you know, feel free to jump in and ask your question yourself. But I do know it was something regarding age limits. Could you talk a little bit about any age limits you're aware of, and or just simply age appropriate for going to the Galapagos?
Well, it's a good question because we do every now and then, you know, there are some families that dive and then there's some families that dive. But, you know, my kids now, my daughter is now 13, but, and she started diving when she was 10, but Galapagos would not, I should say a Galapagos Liveaboard would not be appropriate for the 10 to 12 range. The 12 to 14 range, they still have depth restrictions. So we take divers on Sky that are 15 and older. They definitely, I can't remember now the age for nitrox. I think it's 12 to get their nitrox, but they need to have their nitrox. So the 10 and 11-year-olds, they can't get that. The only exception to this is we have had Kids Sea Camp charter the entire boat. And when they have chartered the entire boat, then it's all kid friendly. And then we do take younger kids. We also add additional dive guides on board. And then we do change it up a little bit as far as the diving up here, because some of it, you know, we're dropping down literally to 80 to 90 feet right off the bat. And you can't hover. You can't put like a 11-year-old and their mom hovering at 40 feet while the rest of the group is at 90. It just doesn't work. It's not safe. So for Sky, we have a 15 and older, again, unless it's a full charter, that then we tone the whole thing down.
Great, thank you. If anybody else has any questions, we do have time. If you wanted to raise your hand, I'll get your microphone unmuted, and you're welcome to speak directly to Amy. I'm sorry that we don't have all the videos or mics, you know, lost the word, automatically showing. I know Amy likes to see faces, I do too, but it's just we have a number of our presenters are dialing in from various countries all over the world, and when we did practice sessions, their internet is just so sketchy that trying to bring in, you know, live microphones ready to go and live video just bogs it down badly on something that some days is also challenging. So I apologize for that. Joanna Williams, I'm working on unmuting you right now. In fact, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just had a question about the luggage allowance. So the flight out to the islands, what is the luggage allowance like? I know you said they're larger planes, but is it the same luggage allowance restrictions you'd have on your normal international flight?
I will pull that up, and no, it is not. So that's a very good question.
That's what I suspected.
Right, that's a good question. So what I tell people, especially our divers, is, and why am I not finding it? What I tell our divers that are bringing their own gear is that why am I not finding it? Oh, here we go. You will probably want to get business class. Just upgrade to business class because you can bring, can you see this slide?
Yes.
Okay, you can see the luggage. Okay. We have an arrangement with Avianca Airlines, which flies between mainland Ecuador and San Cristobal. And Galapagos Sky is Sunday to Sunday. So every Sunday on the Avianca flight going over to San Cristobal, we have 16 seats held and blocked every week going over and 16 seats held and blocked going back. We also have snatched up all of the business class seats so that we have all 10 of the business class seats held and blocked so that our divers can have first choice of those seats. Because it ends up being, I think, like $57 each way, 114 round trip to add the 2 check bags. But normal economy, it's 1 check bag up to 50 pounds. So your international typically allows you, I believe, 2 70-pound, correct? I believe.
A lot of the time it's 50, the international. I mean, if they're in business class, but if they're in coach, it's typically 2 bags at 50. Okay.
So business class, it tends, when we have, you know, our underwater photographers and they have all their extra stuff, you know, business class tends to make more sense. Also, if you're Star Alliance Gold, you automatically get that on Avianca, or if you have like the little life miles through Avianca, if you fly them a lot. But the extra...
What's the cost difference with the business class?
It's an extra $114.
Okay, that's what you were talking about. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good question.
Is there anybody else? If anybody else has any questions, raise your hands and you're welcome to speak directly with Amy. I will say that we have a number of people just asking, can they do add-ons on land-based? And the answer is yes. So before or after your liveaboard, if you want to have, whether it's 1 or 2 days in Quito, or if you want to extend your trip for a few days, a week, 2 weeks, we can customize anything and bring the whole thing together as a package that incorporates Galapagos Sky for your liveaboard experience, which is definitely how we would recommend that you dive the Galapagos Islands. And then depending on exactly what you wanted to do, criteria, budget, time, all that good stuff, we would tailor your add-on to suit anywhere in Ecuador.
Right. And there's, yeah, lots of people, they do Machu Picchu or they spend more time in Quito. But yeah, Deep Blue, they do a great job with that.
Yeah, and we can do land-based stuff too in the Galapagos Islands still. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff nature-wise topside. For diving, this would absolutely be the way that I would do the diving in Galapagos. But there's other things topside to explore if you have some non-divers with you that want to really immerse themselves in the terrestrial animals. with Galapagos Islands, we can continue on your trip in the Galapagos, or as I said, anywhere else in Ecuador. And I wanted to welcome Cara. I'm sorry if I'm messing up your name. I don't know if you want me to unmute you or not, but Cara has been putting a few little comments in our comment box as we've been going along. She's 13. She's certified, including a nitrox. She's saying right now that she has 173 dives. She's been diving since January 2018. So I want to give Cara a big, big welcome here.
Yes, that's great.
Cara, if you're, I want to put you on the spot, but pop it in the chat box if you wanted to say hi on the microphone. I know sometimes at your age, and other people would just talk their heads off. But yeah, big welcome to Cara. And she says this is now on her list as she gets older to come out there. So
yeah,
she's
now,
got
see, a diver like that, we would, 170 some dives at 13. That's exceptional. So she's obviously from a much more serious diving family. So we could certainly have the conversation. Typically, I would still suggest, coming out with like a group like Kids Sea Camp if they want to come before they're 15. But again, sounds like much more of a serious diving family. We would talk to them about the realities of the diving if they wanted to come, this year or next year before, again, she's 15, but, possibly having a private dive guide. So there are options, but I would say, you might want to just put it on the radar for when you're 15. But I have a 13-year-old daughter too. So yeah, I love hearing about young kids diving. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. That's everybody here, I think, is that way. So, and we've all got diving families of our own. So when she mentioned she was 13, she was sharing that because she was saying she was nitrox certified. I tried to unmute her to join in here, but it says she's using a different version of Zoom, and it won't allow me to allow her to talk. But hi, Cara. Hopefully we'll connect you with you a little bit, and thank you for coming today. I did see another question. What size and kind of tanks do you use?
Good question. Let's see. Well, our standard tank is a 12 liter or aluminum 80. I thought I had a picture of it. So our standard tank is the aluminum 80. They can all be DIN or yoke. We have the removable inserts so that they can be DIN. And we do have 6 15-liter or aluminum hundreds on board that I believe are an extra $60. So if someone wanted the upgraded tank, we do have a few of the larger tanks as well. Great.
Does anybody else have any questions? If you do, if you want to raise your hands or pop them in the Q&A box or pop them in the message box or the Q&A box, the comment box, then please go ahead. Otherwise, I know that some of you have, I could sit and talk Galapagos all day, so I don't want to end it early, but I know some of you have been going along with us for quite a while. So if you wanted a quick coffee break, microwave some pizza, whatever, before the next seminar, then I won't take up your time by rambling. Chris did ask $60 for the entire dive trip or per day.
If you rent a tank, it would be for the entire week. Yep. Yeah. Our rentals are all by the week versus by the day.
All right. I will say some of you can choose to be seen just by panelists when you're chatting, or also there should be an option somewhere, and I'll let Carrie jump in if you're struggling with it. But a lot of you are popping questions in the comment box, and there's an option near the drop down for all panelists or panelists and attendees. Us panelists, which is myself, our Deep Blue team, and the speakers are seeing it, but unless you have attendees also, the attendees are not seeing it. And I just wanted to share that because some of you are saying hi, Cara, and congrats, and wish they'd started younger. So there's a few little messages of love here and to Cara, and she's not getting them because the people sending the messages are on panelists only in the comment box. So guys, if you want to be seen by everyone, do know that we're seeing them, which is part of the reason we're reading stuff out. But if you want everybody in the chat box to see what you're saying, please try and find that little drop down and switch to panelists and attendees, and then everybody in the room will see what you're typing. Amy, I'd like to give you the option if there is anything else that you would like to want to share.
I am just amazed that I talked so fast because I usually ramble on for a good hour. And I was telling myself all day that I really had to condense it. And I guess I did a good job of that. But yeah, I hope that people listening have a better idea of what it's like to get there, what the water temperatures are like, you know, what the diving's like. And Galapagos is a very special place right now. All crew members of all the boats there are spending their, I don't know what do we call it? Social distancing time. They're on board the vessels sitting in harbors. And I'm sure that that's not specific just to Galapagos, but probably on liveaboards all over the world. But they're, right now we have 8 crew members on Galapagos Sky. They've been there since the borders closed. And they're keeping the vessel, they're painting and cleaning and keeping her ready. So they're anxious to get back to work. We still don't know when that will be. We're hoping for June, possibly July. But we're looking forward to getting back to things being normal again and welcoming our guests back to Galapagos.
Well, thanks, Amy. I know probably you're busy with your presentation, so hopefully you get a chance to see the chat box history or something later. But yeah, everyone's saying thank you and an awesome presentation. And if it wasn't already, there's a number of people now with Galapagos on their bucket list. So thank you for that.
Well, the girls at Deep Blue do an amazing job. They send divers to us all the time. They know the route, the flights, the best places, you know, to visit before and after, etc. And so if you have any questions, you can send them through them. And thank you. And everybody, please stay safe and healthy and stay home. And let's get through this. And yeah, it'll be good to get back to normal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to you too. I appreciate it, Amy. All right, everybody, we have a 10-minute, we actually have a 10-minute window. We've caught up thanks to Amy's really fast talking. So anybody that wants to, if you're keeping going, anyone that wants a pee break or a coffee break or a sandwich or something like that, now's the time. If you want to join us, our next presentation is on St. Eustatius, also known as Statia, a little tiny secret spot in the Caribbean. So you will need to sign out of this and then sign in for your new one. In your inbox about an hour ago, you would have received a reminder. You can click through there. If you didn't register in advance, you can do that now by going on our website, deepblueadventures.com, and picking We Can Still Dream, and right there's the schedule, and you can get registered. And if you want to take a lunch break now and you can't join us and you don't want to keep going, all of these will be on YouTube for you to catch up later. Amy did send us a stack of information to share with you, and unfortunately Zoom is not cooperating with handing that out in the webinar, but we do have your contact information from your registration, and we will forward that to you as soon as we can get a breath after today's event. And if you're watching this on YouTube later, then please email us info@deepblueadventures.com, and we will forward those files to you also.